Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, February the 8th. We had a bit of a false start and unfortunately that means I just conceded on an arena run. So immediately I give a free victory to somebody else and lose one chance to get a victory myself. But whatever, we've seen consistently with me barely being able to get one victory, maybe two on these arena runs anyways, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, we'll do the accountability section and just start all over again. I've spent the whole weekend banging my head against my router, and honestly I just don't know. I did order from Amazon longer antennas. It was the buying a new router, which very possibly is what needs to happen, that the hardware has just been burnt out, is going to be like $250, where getting longer antennas is only $11, plus the antennas could move to the new router as long as you have detachable antennas, as the Linksys WRT 3200 ACM router does. And unfortunately, if I do have to buy a new router, I am in this catch-22 that's incredibly frustrating, since that model router I just mentioned came out in 2016 and yet it's still the top of the line best router and still at the same price. So it'd be very annoying. I mean, there could be theoretically hardware revisions by buying a new version of the exact same model. But ideally, you would want to move to a newer model, anyways. Particularly when you realize that router in particular has had problems since day one. It had a third Wi-Fi antenna that was completely useless, using WRT, and I don't think was ever implemented even in the default Linksys firmware. And only recently have I been able to once mess with it and actually get it to work. Now, a lot of that probably is because I just got frustrated with it when I first got the router, turned it off, and never looked back. Having a third Wi-Fi SSID only makes a lot of sense is if you're going to connect your router to, say, some other person's Wi-Fi, or pay for two ISP services on two different routers, or use one channel as like a backbone channel, and even that doesn't, I think, really make the most amount of sense. So yeah, the whole idea of having a third channel doesn't make sense unless you wanted to do different frequencies, which arguably maybe there is an argument to doing different frequencies, because maybe some devices don't work so well on certain channels. But yeah, the whole thing is a mess and incredibly frustrating. It's not even working right now, but so far as streaming, it seems like it's going to work, and I'm not going to mess with the internet for several hours just to delay the start time of the stream even further. As for video game actual accountability, I am playing Danganronpa. It's taken about 10 hours to get to the first school trial, and it's a little frustrating, to say the least, that it's taken that long to get that far. You kind of needed that. You needed a visual novel story to set up the mystery, but then also establish the characters. Although one character, even though I've been watching Game Grumps, one character got killed, and I did not see that episode, so I did not know that character had gotten killed, which almost makes me question if perhaps certain groups of characters are interchangeable and there are actual branching paths of the story. The main mystery seems to be the same, but I wouldn't be surprised if 3 or 4 of the 15 students that could be potentially killed in the story wouldn't be surprised if 5 of them are interchangeable and could die at different times. The way that breaks it down as far as actual gameplay is that you pretty much, assuming the story doesn't change, you pretty much have to spend 1 increment of free time with each of the people who die before the first class trial, because you only have 3 free times, and 3 people are going to die, 1 being the actual murderer. But the problem with that idea is also around the thought that you can talk to one specific character and get more information, which I confirmed. So the first murder victim in Danganronpa, I knew who that was going to be. I talked to them 2 out of the 3 opportunities I could, and I did get a gold star next to that person's name on the second time I talked to her on the report cards. And on the report cards, there is definitely enough room for there to be a second gold star. And by talking to that person the second time, I also did get an extra bonus. The first time I got an ability, a skill. Second time I got more skill points to use. So either there's a New Game Plus mechanic here, or there are multiple paths in which you they're thinking you're going to play this game, and in that way you're going to get everything. Or maybe there just isn't a way to get everything in one New Game Plus style playthrough, and maybe they do just want you to yeah, it is possible they do just intend for you to play the game multiple times, and that's kind of crazy, because there aren't great skip opportunities. You can hold the B button to skip forward, but that's about it. Unless they come back in a New Game Plus mechanic where you can jump to specific days and specific times at specific days, you're gonna run through a lot of conversation. And oddly, they kind of created it in a different way. They told the player that while they highly discourage the idea of you skipping the free time, which is when you would talk to people and have the opportunity to choose who you're going to talk to, that's the only thing you could actually skip in the entirety of Danganronpa so far. Where arguably you would not want to skip the free time, you would want to skip all the story and investigation time, and you would want to skip the classroom trial time. And yeah, that's seemingly not something you can do on the first gameplay. So unless there is a New Game Plus function that adds more functions, the only way I could imagine you could have a great experience with Danganronpa would be if you managed to like mod it, because that's really what needs to happen. Is there needs to be a mod out there that would let you skip things. If I play this, I can't play that, and that doesn't really kill anything, so I think I have to do this.
I won't let you get away.
Your ignorance is clear.
Okay, so this guy can strike,
Abide by the law.
and when he does, we can do that,
No right to tread here.
and we can do that,
No right to tread here.
and we can not evolve that, not evolve that. So we have to kind of leave that there. So it does feel like what's going to happen over this week is I'll probably spend a lot of time with Danganronpa, and I've got to figure out some way to also schedule videos too. I'm at a point where I'm pretty low as far as videos to upload, and now would be the time. I'm also probably closer to missing a release time if I don't pay attention. So yeah, we are back to a scenario where I should spend some time scheduling videos, regardless of how much I hate it. I also found out that the plugin, the Great Suspender, that I've been using, I do vaguely recall this happened, but I paid no attention to it, and I guess I should have paid some attention to it. That plugin on Chrome, apparently either a year or two ago, the creator of that sold it to some other company, and then they started putting some shady code in it, and people didn't trust it, and it got removed from the Chrome storefront. So I've potentially been running some kind of like spyware type software that maybe was tracking me or sending some information. Clearly it really hasn't affected me much, but that software is no longer recommended. So instead I have installed a similar program called Tiny Suspender that does the same thing. Arguably, you probably don't even need any suspender at all. The only thing is, in particular, is I want to be able to suspend tabs on the YouTube Play page. Otherwise, the YouTube Play page will automatically start playing video while I start streaming, wasting bandwidth. That's pretty much the only thing that does need to be suspended. I have so much RAM in my new computer, it's not really an issue. Of course, on my router, the RAM being bad might very well be part of the problem. I think, though, it's probably the hardware or the software, not the direct RAM. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually a burnt out chip on the Wi-Fi modules. We got a free victory there. So that probably won't affect much since it does about the same, but Chrome does need to update, and I'll have to do that after the stream. And I don't think, I am hoping when it updates it also fixes the auto scroll bar minimizer plugin. Like, ideally you want plugins to not have to exist, and you would like these features just built into Chrome itself if they're worthwhile. It's really a matter, I guess, of who is maintaining the code base. Like, Linux almost certainly would not succeed if Linus Torvalds was focusing on every single aspect of Linux. Linus Torvalds and the Linux group he ran or does run, I'm not sure at this point, focuses just on the kernel and the lowest level of security involved around the kernel space, and tries to push all other code that's unnecessary and not related directly to the kernel or things that should be in the kernel. He tries to push that out up into the user space. And if you take that thought further, if the people in charge of making, say, ZFS file system or BTRFS were also the same people who are making the calculator app and LibreOffice and every single program in Linux, the focus would just be so split. So the idea of plugins for Chrome probably is a great idea, like having people focus on it. The problem there, though, is that Chrome extensions and plugins are almost certainly not well maintained, or they're being created by somebody who has who has limited amount of time and a limited amount of focus, or is just a small programmer base supporting that code, where ideally I would like to see more people working in collaboration. Chrome extensions in particular
Seek what is not there.
tend to just try and copy each other and make multiple versions of the same thing doing the same thing, none of the software being very supported. You see that also on things like
A fitting end.
Android phone apps and iOS apps. There's hundreds of calculator apps, there's hundreds of Flappy Bird clones. There's really no reason for that to exist when a more open source mentality would have everybody working on one good calculator app, maybe two or three. But yeah, let's start covering the video game news. I had some stuff left over from Friday, some games on Steam. I did go through a little bit of that and curate it, but it's fairly difficult to decide to eliminate anything because almost every game has some level of commentary worthwhile saying on it, even if that commentary often is the exact same the exact same thing. I can deal 2 damage. I can evolve.
The hunt has only begun.
You think you're strong enough? Away with you! Forever and evermore.
Just go ahead and put that on the field. So yeah, we have a decent amount of news on top of new news that came out over the weekend as far as video games that came out. Actual video game news as far as announcements, though, I think are pretty limited. I don't think much happened over this weekend. So let's start here. We have a game on Steam here called Just Skate It, where in a funny way this almost feels like somebody was trying to do something and it isn't just like an asset flip physics game. I would almost be willing to say if this was a student project that this is like a good first presentation, particularly if you had like 2 weeks to maybe 2 months to develop something like this. Like, this doesn't seem that terrible. But as an actual game, you have like this long board, and then you have this asset flip. Wow, another person disconnected. Good. And we might actually make it to the second round at this rate. We might even get all the daily quests done today. At that rate, because yeah, we've got 2 victories already. Extra. And it's called Just Shake It, not Skate It. If I called it Just Skate It. But yeah, pretty much you can tell that this is an asset flip character, and this is an asset flip longboard that's completely out of scale, and these are asset flip platforms. $5.24, English, Korean, Japanese. Yeah, there's just not enough here to justify that price. Next we have a game called Norsk Epistle, which
My quarry won't escape that easy.
looks like it's an asset flip first person shooter to me.
Ruler of the skies.
I feel like there's always this danger that I'm gonna just start calling everything an asset flip regardless, and that I'm coloring my own rose tinted glasses, or in this case poop tinted glasses, as far as games on Steam. $1.99, English only, third party EULA. 2.5 hours of gameplay. Yeah, I don't think that there's something here. So I'm gonna have to pass on that. YouTube put out this self-certification guide specifically for gaming content. At this point, I have completely chosen to stop listening to anything YouTube has to say, because YouTube is a jerk. As if corporations are people, YouTube is the biggest jerk out there that I have to deal with in my life. I'm not in the YouTube partner program, so at some point it might be useful to look at some of these guidelines if I ever am in the partner program, but also they've changed the rules and moved the goalposts so much that by the time I was back in the YouTube partner program getting pennies for views, the rules probably would have changed there also. Honey Pop 2 is just out, and one of my more successful series on YouTube was playing Honey Pop. The message I get from that is I should play Honey Pop 2, and whatever new rules have come into place or been added to YouTube be damned. Like, it's I kind of know where the line is, and I'm gonna strive to not cross that line, but also it doesn't seem like it benefits you any more than to sort of try and follow the rules instead of being anal retentive about following the rules with YouTube. In a funny way, that is kind of the truth with laws too, and oddly business laws and employment law too, is that it doesn't really benefit you to actually try and follow all the equal opportunity laws or anything like that, or even the American with Disabilities Act regulations to make your business, say, handicap accessible and things like that. Like, it is just easier to ignore those rules. Sadly, I think that's probably true for a lot of restaurants too. It's like you know the health code violations you really shouldn't violate, and then you know the what places where they don't look that good and they don't care that much, and you don't waste your time and resources trying to maintain that. Although after this whole pandemic, I wouldn't be surprised if once restaurants start to open up more, I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot more restaurants that voluntarily go the extra mile to make sure the food is safe and sanitary. And I wouldn't be surprised if food inspectors in particular start doubling down on violations. But yeah, there's basically nothing that I want to hear from YouTube at this point. I have nothing but disdain for them, and that's where they say a relationship is pretty much over, is when you have open disdain for your partner. This is also the second gaming related video they put out for more clarifications.
Nice,
which, yeah, that's sucky to say the least. So we got 2 victories, which will give us, you would have needed 4 wins to qualify for Group A, so that wasn't even going to happen, but we do get a card pack ticket and 40 rupees, so that is not terrible. Now we have to log back in. We had hints that the next Minecraft Dungeons expansion would be in the Nether. We now know for a fact that that is the case. It arrives in February of 2021. I don't think anybody really particularly should care about that, though, considering Minecraft Dungeons was not really that interested. Another 40 gold. And another arena run, so as we are right now, we have enough to buy 50 packs when a new expansion comes out. And we are sitting on these tickets to open a whole bunch when the expansion of this happens. Storm of Rival, we might as well use this pack ticket because there's no reason not to use it. Since they aren't going to add any new cards to that expansion. If they went back and did add cards to an old expansion, that would be really weird and kind of crazy. It would be an interesting idea, certainly. Like, say, and I'll use Magic the Gathering as a comparison here instead of this to make it easier. Well, no, it'd probably be easier to just do this. Say the classic card pack got an expansion added to it every year, and it took a collection of all the cards in later expansions and said, well, we think these are actually classic cards that should just be in this drop rate. That'd be really interesting. But what you would have to do is not have a classic card back. You'd ideally want to have a default classic Forestcraft pack, and then like a default classic Swordcraft, and then you could maybe move the cards around a little bit and reduce some expansions into other default classics, so you could have like a third tab here, and then there would be a reason specifically to go back and buy some of these older packs, even if you had a complete collection in the previous. But that would just be slicing your pie in different ways to sell it in different ways, and that's not a terrible thought, certainly. I guess the question really comes down to, is there a chance that any of those were new? Let's see, 13, 14. So if I opened 3 packs and got 14 cards, there is one new card that I got, but honestly I could not tell you what it was. Alright. And then our missions for today, now that it's reset, was Forestcraft or Runecraft. So do we want to try Forestcraft and maybe win, or do we want to try Runecraft and almost guarantee a loss? Yeah, let's stick with Forestcraft. See, I can see there's a problem already with the way this tiny suspender works, in that it doesn't automatically unsuspend. That could be a settings thing, so I'll have to work on that. TechRaptor has an article here. The Epic Games Store Spring Showcase event has been announced. Which, okay, so the Epic Games Store is going to have a showcase. Well, it actually does automatically unsuspend when you click on it, but there's a long delay there. And honestly, I kind of feel like
My quarry won't escape that easy.
I probably should just whitelist everything except for the one page I do want to suspend, because of the way that half-second delay times 100 pages is going to be like 50 seconds, nearly a minute of wasted time. And then it does put in an awkward pause. Yeah, we have a game here on Steam called Era of Defense, which clearly this is just a asset flip survival game. 99 cents, English only. For a second there, it looks like it might have been VR, but I don't think it is. TechRaptor has an article here. E3 2020-21 plans reportedly are moving forward. However, I also saw that people are balking at the six-figure sum price tag to be involved. Inherently, E3 has to continue to pretend like it's going forward until it is just no longer going forward. There's basically no other way. There's basically no way to work with it anyways. You know, one thing to mention about the tiny suspender though is that there is, since Chrome version 54 has an experimental native tab discarding function, which you could try and use. So by default, I imagine this will eventually just be implemented, and potentially implemented better and faster. Guess I can't do anything, so I'll just play.
Your defeat was foretold.
Yeah, I really can't imagine there being any good argument at all for E3 to exist in the form that it exists. Like, the old E3 was dying for a very long time, and it is kind of insane to try and maintain that. What a new E3 could be, I have no idea. Like, because now after this whole pandemic, I seriously doubt you're going to have a lot of people who want to go to big experiences like that, knowing how the con flu was a real thing. I think these things will happen, but I feel like more and more it'll be limited by Las Vegas and the city, and I just can't imagine E3 occurring the way it has been occurring for the past couple of years, where it tried to be for consumers. If you're going to do that, it almost has to all of a sudden become this open air event like Burning Man, and even that probably wouldn't be safe health-wise. So I could imagine E3 becoming a much smaller thing again, and being industry only, and the elite, like mainstream video game journalists. But also, I don't know who funds that. All of this is coming through the ESA, so I wouldn't be surprised if the ESA is just willing to flip the bill for a couple years. But the ESA was making money off of E3, and that was the only thing they didn't make money off of, so they've got to really convince a whole bunch of businesses to waste money, which in good times, that's surprisingly easy, but in bad times, it's totally not easy. And so yeah, I can't imagine E3 as it is. I imagine you would do much better to try to maintain income by having a digital E3 and still charging not 6 figures, but I could see 5 figures, charging like $10,000 or more to be a major factor and a major part of the presentation during this E3 live stream event that would take place over the course of several days. Also, then E3 doesn't have to rent out a big convention center, which saves them tons of money. they could certainly get plenty of advertisers, sorry about that, to advertise to through digital stores.
Stop it.
You could have just pre-recorded presentations or live presentations happening all over the place.
It might be dry, but it's home.
All right. Need this.
Uncharted desert awaits. For the town's prosperity. The hunt has only begun. I'll look after this town for as long as home sweet home.
Okay.
For the town's prosperity.
Still think I have to kill that. Moving on, we have a Gamma Sutra article. The French mobile studio Homa nets $15 million to create hyper-casual titles. They've made games like Nerf Epic Pranks, Sky Roller, and Idle World, which all of those names sound like very low-effort games. We have a game on Steam here called Travel Fan 2, or Travel Fans, which looks like it is either a board game or a city builder. Neither one of them look particularly visually polished. 99 cents early access. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. The Shadow of War publisher, Warner Brothers, has just been granted the patent on the Nemesis system. So, like, they've literally been probably not even working on a third game in the Middle-earth trilogy. The Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War series is pretty old at this point, and they just got the patent. It inherently highlights the problem with the patent system. Now, I think if you've applied for a patent and it has yet to be approved, you still get some more legal protection. And last time I heard, that is the right move, is to just apply for patents as soon as possible, even if it takes years and gets fought by the patent office because it's too generic. But it definitely highlights from a layman's perspective just the ridiculousness of patents and how, in this case, Warner Brothers Interactive Media has been able to run their business and use the Nemesis system perfectly fine for 2 games, to the point where they could have easily had a third game had Shadow of Mordor sold better, and Shadow of Mordor would have sold a lot better if it was not designed specifically to have a whole bunch of microtransactions in it, and that irritated a lot of the player base. So yeah, there's definitely a scenario here where you're completely wasting your time trying to even get a patent, and it's ridiculous for patents to even exist when the entire sellability of the game is completely unaffected by whether or not a patent system exists or not. All this patent does now is stop other companies from having a Nemesis system, which they had already been stopped from having a Nemesis system. Like, obviously, people knew this patent was in the process of being submitted, and no other game developers tried to do it. You don't even really need a Nemesis system, because you could easily make a similar gameplay mechanic, not call it the Nemesis system, and then have to have Warner Brothers fight it out in court. It's also worth mentioning Warner Brothers, in this whole, over the course of this time, has been acquired by like AT&T, so it's a completely different like owner by the time this patent happened.
Awaken, for the end is near.
if you ever wonder why games are $60, I bet some amount of that $60 is literally just going to a lawyer fund in which they're constantly trying to patent and own concepts
You wanna play with me?
versus that money being spent on something like
The hunt has
development
only
of a new game.
I'm happy I was born this way. Away
Let's
with
do
you.
that and do that.
A fitting end. I just
And
gotta
then hit
break
that.
stuff, right?
So yeah,
Aw, broken already?
like Gamma Switcher puts it precisely here. At this point, it's unclear what Warner Bros. Would do if another studio attempted to implement a Nemesis-style system in the future, given similar systems have already been added to major features like Assassin's Creed. So yeah, it just really goes to highlight the waste of time, and you would hope that somebody at AT&T looked at that money spent and decided and realized that that was a waste of funding and time. Yeah, Video Game Chronicles also pushing E3 pushes forward with plans for a digital 2021 event. So they are going to try and make it digital. I'm not surprised. But yeah. I can't imagine having an event like this with all these number of people. I could imagine having an event at a big conference room with lots of like 6 feet away markers and only selected people are allowed in, but I still feel like that would just fall apart. The Super Bowl happened over the weekend. I didn't watch it or anything, but I certainly was able to see select footage of people walking around very close to each other, not wearing masks, definitely not embracing the idea of wearing the two different types of masks, which it would be fairly hard, I think, to even get the two types of masks for most people if everybody was trying to get them. But yeah, as soon as there's an event, as soon as there's an excuse, as soon as there's even a slight letting your guard down, people will do that. It is like tensing a muscle effectively, and like people are not really designed or capable of sticking to what they need to stick to ensure that they won't get infected.
Forever and ever more.
And I guess maybe ironically, if immunizations and vaccinations had been implemented a little bit earlier, maybe then you could make an argument that would be fine. There is an argument that like if the COVID is still around, but it's infecting or attacking so few people that we're able to handle it, that would be great. Of course, that does make an argument that is really invalid, considering how some percentage of people who have COVID are just dead within hours of it occurring. They're not getting enough time to even survive long enough from an ambulance ride. So, like, there is that consideration also to make.
For the town's prosperity.
But yeah, I have a hard time believing Las Vegas is going to be the same Las Vegas. It's going to almost certainly become a ghost town or a much smaller town. It would make more sense, frankly, for all of Nevada to have spreaded itself thinner anyways and have several gambling towns throughout the state instead of just one big Las Vegas central point. It is almost like the Tokyo concept, and it shows the flaws of the Tokyo concept. And I imagine Japan and Tokyo are also going to suffer horrendously because of that same idea. Alright, so this guy's gonna strike.
You have no right
Which-
to tread here. You have no right to tread here.
Yeah, we have to strike with this guy,
Protecting
which is gonna kill everything except for that.
Stop it. Cycles on.
Didn't realize this guy.
I shall give birth to a new world. I shall give birth to a new world.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna lose here. Game of Citra has an article here. Focus Home Interactive opens up a new Deck 13 studio in Montreal.
Nice marksmanship.
Okay. Do we know what they're working on? Not at this point. I'm sure in a couple months they'll announce something new. TechRaptor has this article. GameStop wants you to visit during a pandemic for a shiny Pokemon, so GameStop's staying classy. The whole like Wall Street Bets thing, I think, has lost its 15 minutes of fame. I think it's still going on, but I don't think there'll be any big news around it unless there's another swing upward. The idea of GameStop doing any kind of event, or GameStops in general just being open, is kind of crazy. GameStop has been ridiculous. Certainly is trying to maintain their business as is, when clearly the smart move would have been to implement some features of delivery with high delivery fees from GameStop that you could pocket. That would be like fairly easy. Yeah, it would be fairly easy to say like same day delivery or your money back or $5 off your order. A delivery fee of $4.99 to even as high as $8.99. Free delivery on the purchases over $200 from GameStop would be fine too. And then you just put a bunch of kids that you're underpaying and underworking at GameStop. You even at that point even maybe hire some new kids and have them drive around and just deliver the games manually.
I owe those women a debt, you see.
And that would be easy. It's not particularly like GameStop ever really liked the fact that there was kids going into their store and playing video games and not spending any money. They just had to put up with it because that's just the kind of store it was always going to be. And that it definitely was a mall store that was designed around people walking in and walking out and just getting as much foot traffic to increase your odds of sales. But yeah, GameStop has failed to really implement a great competitor to Amazon.com as far as its online presence. It's not really offering much. Last time I used it, which was many years ago, it had a whole rewards program which was just kind of garbage. But yeah, they failed to do that. Instead, they're trying. GameStop, from everything I've seen, is seemingly trying to just double down on being a retailer and only a retailer, and that's just not going to work for probably any business at all. Even the grocery stores nowadays are moving from being just a retail grocery store to also a food delivery service or a pickup at the door service.
to unify
And I wouldn't be surprised if almost all businesses eventually just say pick up at the door is heavily pushed and recommended or even required. And we hit a point where even the idea of going inside of a store is old-fashioned and not encouraged, if not completely disallowed.
Away with you!
But yeah, GameStop is an idiot. What can we say? Nothing new there. TechRaptor has an article. Flying Wild Hog is working with Jagex on a production that will probably announce this year. So yeah, we've got some picture here of kind of like a Dubai-esque building, or maybe a, like, yeah. I feel like I've seen a building like this in a movie. And then you've got a different building over here, but then over here you have people. So this might very well just be background art. Flying Wild Hog. Yeah, I don't know what Flying Wild Hog would have worked on otherwise. Jagex also purchased a company called Carlisle and had some kind of legal disputes, so we don't even know. That's something I don't even remember. There's been so many controversies and legal disputes. Let's see. Well, if we play this, we can do 2 damage. And then we do this. We can do that. If we do that, we can do that.
Away with you! What is it you desire?
Gamma Sutra has a sponsored content here. Normally I'd ignore this, but new to coding, here's why Python is a strong place to start. I agree. Python is probably a strong place to start. In particular, also, if you don't stick to it too long. 1, maybe 2 years of Python education for students, and then moving on to C++ is probably the right move, or C#. Yeah, it's kind of unfair to split C++ and C# apart, because if someone can program in C#, they can also program in C++ and C, which is even listed here. I do think it is good for students. I don't know if I would argue it's good for actually production run programming. You probably could get away with making a program in Python. Heck, I've done it, but it wouldn't be my ideal go-to program. I don't think really compiled code. I think it's what they call a real REHL programming language, which is, I think, a read, evaluate, heuristics language or something like that. It stands for, which basically means it reads the actual English code and evaluates it on the fly and executes it as it evaluates it, which that is incredibly slower than a compiled executable compared that you would get out of C++ or C#. Also, Python's formatting structure is awkward in an attempt to not be awkward. It's made it awkward, making spaces and tabs very, very important, when often any other code doesn't have to be that precise, and you can have an extra space here and there and it won't do anything to your code.
There you are, my
or have an entire program not work. You could easily have a program with 5,000 lines of code, and one misinterpretation or mistype can stop the whole thing from running, which can be incredibly frustrating. Also, you certainly have to point out that Python coding is so different from every other coding language that it establishes learning something one way that you then immediately have to kind of forget. And so I would definitely be willing to listen to an argument to say don't teach Python to kids, only teach C, C++, C#, because that's the only language that anybody should learn and start with. But then you run into the problems of, like, you probably, if you ever work with any kind of web presenting app, you probably do want to understand HTML and JavaScript, or HTML5, and that's going to be a completely different language too. And so if you're going to be a programmer, you just have to be able to learn more than one language. You cannot be an isolationist in programming. But it is also, I think, worth mentioning in the sponsored content on Gamasutra that it's both unsurprising and strange, in my mind, that they have to basically pay for advertising to promote Python, but also it's very unsurprising that that's the case because Python is pretty much the worst thing you could possibly program in if you were going to try and make video games. It is just completely disconnected from where that would be.
I won't let you get away.
Like, you really would be foolish if you tried to have if you tried to program a game in Python, that would just be pretty terrible. I don't think Unity or Unreal particularly handle Python very well, if they handle it at all. And even in that case, I will point out that Unity and Unreal as engines try to bend over backwards to accommodate people who want to program in different kinds of languages a lot more than they probably should. I think you actually can program a game in JavaScript using either Unreal or Unity. I think Unity, which is, I believe, how Yandere Simulator was writing the code at one point. I think he finally stopped doing that. Which, that's just total insanity to try and program a game running in JavaScript. And totally explained why that code did not run particularly well.
I shall give birth to a new world. Is your judgment?
Okay. I can't evolve this. I can do this.
No right to tread here.
I can do
I owe
this.
those women a debt, you see.
And so I can then evolve this up.
This is the end.
You think you're strong? Away with
And
you.
hit that, I guess.
Impressive.
Next, we have a game on Steam just called Starter Pack, which clearly this is an asset flip. Just like ridiculous. An action open world first person shooting RPG game made only with the starter pack in UE4, Unreal Engine 4. Like, how is a description like this not looked at by somebody and just disallowed on Steam? It's really ridiculous. $2.99 to resell an asset flip, an actual asset, and not even hiding it. Like, just blatantly doing it. Now, theoretically, nobody buys these, but somebody probably does buy them, either because they're stupid or they're money laundering. And there needs to be an active attempt to combat that before Valve gets tied up into a lawsuit and accused of money laundering, as they get accused of so many other things. Like these shady business practices that they've been allowed to get away with in the past are going to get called out, particularly as the economy goes downward. Moving on, we have Empire of the Sin update 1.03 limits fast travel and improves the combat AI,
Time for
which
me to prove myself.
I don't think Empire of the Sin was a particularly well liked game, so improvements are nice, but I don't think that's gonna particularly convince me to go back and look at it either. That wasn't much of an improvement. Here we have a game on Steam called Cold Heart, which looks like it's a mobile game, and even for a mobile game it doesn't look like it's visually polished enough to interest me. $3.19, bunch of languages, allegedly audio on all of those languages.
I lost.
Yeah, there is this definite case here where I just don't 100% know where to put a mobile game, because in my mind, subconsciously, I do feel that urge and that twinge to give a little bit of a break to mobile games being ported to Steam compared to a low effort asset flip that seems like it's only PC only, when I really shouldn't. I should try and treat things a lot more fair in my mind, but yeah, subconscious biases do seem to exist. Here we have a game called Becastled on Steam, which is already mixed. Visuals here look fine, but it is just a base building tower defense game. It's early access, $13.49. That's too expensive.
A dazzling victory awaits.
Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Sony has picked up a minor stake in From Software's parent company, Kadakawa Corporation, which I'd have to look specifically at what Kadakawa actually releases. Let's see if we can get that from Wikipedia, because that could be way worse information. See. It may be not that bad for video games in particular, because it looks like Kodakawa is more of a publisher of video, so I very well may be recognizing their may very well be recognizing their name from animes more than video games, but I almost certainly think that there are some games that have either been spinned off from animes by Kadakawa Corporation or similar. If we look on Wikipedia under the category of others, we have From Software is a video game company as a parent company, and over here we have Spike Chunsoft as under Group Media, which I recognize too. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Spike Chunsoft all of a sudden has to censor their games more because Sony has a minority share, although I'm not sure if much would really change there. And then, like, as far as From Software, that's Bloodborne and Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, so I don't think there's much that would have to be censored there. Spike Chunsoft is the bigger issue, certainly. They made the first 5 Dragon Quest installments in the Mystery Dungeon franchise. Then they made Conception, which is a game visual novel around the concept of conceiving children with people, with anime girls. Then we have the Zero Escape series and Danganronpa franchise. So I didn't even realize that through merger, these two games, these two visual novel games I'm playing, are now basically owned by the same company. So, so that, well, apparently they were always a sister company. So I guess it wasn't that much of a real merger anyways. Actually need to play here.
Straight shooter, eh?
See. They've also got the Steins Gate series, or Steins Gate Zero series.
Retiring early.
So, yeah. We could see some censorship there. And there definitely is maybe even an argument for censorship, if there ever was an argument for censorship in Danganronpa, since that's the game I'm playing right now, because there definitely is a part where you have, these are high school students, and one of the high school students is being specifically drawn to have large breasts, and the camera in one instance at least has emphasized that a lot, and just looking at her in general emphasizes that a lot. One of the characters literally was drawn in a scene to have an upskirt shot, but that was blacked out and censored in, so I guess they've already pre-censored that. There was another section where there could have been an upskirt shot that was also censored, so you can already see in Danganronpa's case they did do the work to kind of censor it. But it makes no sense because it's like a murder mystery game, so the idea of potential lewd and pervy things don't make sense. There's been 4 or 5 times where characters have acted very wonky and silly and made perverted jokes. And I don't think that stops at any point in the game. So you just kind of have to put up with these weird perverted jokes that just don't translate to English at all. Which, if you wanted to make the argument that they were all just perverted teenagers left on their own, fine, make that argument, but do it and write it a lot more natural. And it's really hard to integrate that idea into a story where the students have been told they have to murder each other if they want to escape. That's where I think those kinds of jokes would be thrown out the window.
My blade is your salvation.
So yeah. They also developed Fire Pro Wrestling and some of the Pokemon games. Spike Chunsoft did. Let's see. They've also published some Western games in Japan. So they published like Hotline Miami and The Witcher 2 and Darksiders 2. Some of these deals almost certainly have dried up these days. But yeah. It would be definitely premature to be particularly concerned about the state of Spike Chunsoft just because Sony has bought a minor stake of Kodaka or Corporation. If anything, this is a very standard Japanese thing of just protecting your bottom line by investing in your competitors. Of course, that is still pretty much protecting your bottom line by investing in the same industry, where Sony might be better off if they bought a chip factory or two, or a corporation or two, somewhere as like in China or somewhere else, but get into a parallel industry, not staying with what Sony is mostly known for these days, which is making entertainment products. That they're not greatly known for their sales of hardware and electronics these days. Samsung has kind of beaten them on that. Moving on, we have Maquette launching March 2nd. If this is the game I think it is, and this looks a little bit different, it's basically a perspective puzzle game where you kind of loop around and around and around. But in this screenshot, I see like 5 different regions, and maybe even some corner regions here, which is not how I had seen the game previously. So yeah, like this room here, this dome, is actually this also. It, in a lot of ways, is a tech demo. I mean, you really can't get away from that too much, but it's still very easy to pull off that. Okay. Play this.
You have no right to tread
Play
here.
this.
I owe those women a debt, you see.
Evolve this.
The hunt has only begun.
Break the law, straight shooting.
Attack there.
Oh, waffle cakes.
End the turn. This guy's up to like 25 health. Yep.
Nice marksmanship.
We have a video here, so we can kind of look at it. This game, as a tech demo, or feeling much like a tech demo, is going to live and die on just how many puzzles you can actually build around that concept. So yeah, you have this like 3D model, and then you can rotate it and zoom it to make it larger or smaller, and then it will affect the rest of the world. So it's like a 4-dimensional puzzle. Yep. This is much like the game Subliminal, in the sense that Subliminal could have been a lot better had it just had more interesting puzzles and maybe more interesting story. And so we'll hope for more of that there. If anything, I would say that is exactly what Maquette is, and I may be mispronouncing that word almost certainly. Maquette. See, they have some casts here: Bryce Dallas Howard and Seth Gable. I don't know who. I don't recognize those names, but I don't follow video game voice actors that much. Right. So we need one more Forcecraft victory, and then we can play something different, just for variety. And I feel like every Forcecraft victory I've gotten today has been through Quick Disconnect. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Maquette was created and funded simply because somebody had leaked out the demo of Subliminal early enough that somebody could make a copy of it while still trying to make a decent copy instead of just like a low effort asset flip copy. So I would hope that there is actually some passion there. I would really hope that Maquette actually becomes the good version of Subliminal, and people kind of forget about Subliminal, but like the concept of perspective shifting. Although I don't know how much that concept can be integrated. It wouldn't make a lot of sense in like a Call of Duty for all of a sudden you to be able to perspective shift, and then almost any story set in a real world scenario, it falls apart completely as an idea. I think we may have already covered this, but we have a blog here on Gamasutra called Revisiting the Fall of Resident Evil, which links to a video. Yeah. So check that out if you're interested. Just go ahead and play that one and do that. Next we have a game on Steam called Across the Demon Realm. which, an Oregon Trail game set in a demon realm. Well, boy, have you mixed two very disparate ideas there. Brutal and gory adventure with random events. Well, you certainly caught my attention here. And in a weird way, it feels like they've added some RPG elements to make Oregon Trail make a lot more sense in an idea that people should have thought of a lot earlier. Like, yeah, how do you improve Oregon Trail to make it a modern game? You put in some RPG elements, you make it a travel experience. This is very interesting. The price, unfortunately, is $29.99, and let's see. I have to wonder if maybe this is a game that's more interested in telling a dark story than actually making a game. Like, there's a danger here of this feeling a lot like Binding of Isaac and being more expensive than Binding of Isaac and then not really delivering. But I want to put that on the fall list. That is an intriguing idea. Maybe it will take somebody else a while to steal that idea and do it better. Because that might be the move, is to have that improved upon. The heads up display in the life bars is kind of rough, and the animation style is kind of rough across the demon realm. So yeah, there are things that could be polished a little bit more, but yeah, I like that concept. I love the wild and crazy concepts when they come out, and so rarely is anybody able to do anything with them or able to have them.
I owe those women a debt, you see.
Let's see.
I won't let you get away.
Break the law, straight shooter, eh?
There we go.
He's immortal.
Let's see. Commando has an article here. Gods Will Fall DLC roadmap has been announced, which I've already forgotten about this game when I don't think it is even out yet, which that's certainly a bad statement. Tigruptor has an article here. We're continuing down the narrative here that Pokemon cards are worth something. A mint condition of Pokemon card set sells for $666,000. At a certain point, you're just memeing that price tag. And 103 cards. I assume this is all Series 1, just complete collection of cards. Which, arguably, I don't know if there are too many people out there that even want a complete collection of mint Pokemon Series 1 cards, because that would have to be basically a speculator or somebody who's just brand new to trying to collect Pokemon cards. Because I imagine any real collector of Pokemon cards before this major upturn in their auction value prices would have collected at least one mint condition Series 1. And every time I see a price tag like that, I definitely have to think about, would I want to go into my Nintendo collection that's in the garage and try and pull out any of the Pokemon cards that I know I had and see if any of them are even in any condition. The danger to that certainly is I don't want to break up the collection and sell it to speculators and collectors. I want to give it to a museum. And I don't want to go look at that Nintendo collection and realize that it's just been ruined by heat or insects or something else because it's been in a garage for several years. Which there is a good chance that's exactly the case. I do have plans, once this whole pandemic stuff is really done, to finally give it to a museum. But it's not realistic to try and do that at the moment.
The path ahead is overgrown.
Ideally, I could donate it to the museum, and maybe the museum then would say, well, we don't need this thing or this thing, let's sell it and fund the museum, or even sell some of it and give it back to me, since I was such a decent person. But boy, is that sticking your head in the sand and thinking you're going to get rewarded for good deeds in a world that does not reward people for good deeds. Moving on, we have something here from xphase.com, which is a weird website I haven't ever covered before. There's this game called Natsuki Chronicles that has some trophies that have been listed, which I guess this is probably confirmation that this game is coming out for, I think it said the PS4, yes. But I don't recognize Natsuki Chronicles. It does look like it is a mech game or a visual novel around mechs. Take your pick, one or the other. We can have Ward, or we can restore defense. But we can't have both.
No right to tread here.
I owe those women a debt, you see.
Alright.
This is the end.
Break the law? Straight shooter, eh?
Oh, the blueprints.
So that can save me a little bit, but not a lot. My Chrome has gone from you should update in green to you should update in yellow.
Nice marksmanship.
Gamer Sutra has an article, quote, "Why was that focusing on Miranda's butt and other dev tales from the remastering Mass Effect?" This is a mini controversy that I would say is happening right now. I don't think I would really put it under the category of much of a real controversy. On one hand, yes, they are changing things. They are changing the textures and models, and they are moving the camera in some cutscenes. So it is not focusing on specific characters, but fem ships, but often. Which also just means if you were playing the male shepherd, often there were camera angles that would show his butt. It more than anything probably shows that there is just a deep sexualization in the minds of the remasters of Mass Effect. And honestly, I just don't think we're going to get to a good society that we'd like to get to if we are constantly saying that a picture that happens to show the lower half of someone's backside is sexual if it's a female, and it's not sexual if it's a man. That's literally sexism. And seeing a clothed backside, which is really all they're talking about, I think, in all of these scenes, or just having the game just not be polished enough to not do that, is it's just not a big deal. People see butts all the time. Butts exist. Butts are good to look at. A good butt on a guy is, to me, just as nice to look at as a good butt on a girl. But yeah, it's just a ridiculous over-focusing on things that are just not important and just don't matter. You get a more extreme version of this mentality, which this really goes to show that the people who are remastering Mass Effect really do subscribe to the Anita Sarkeesian way of thinking that everything is sexist everywhere, because Anita Sarkeesian specifically made this argument that butts are overemphasized on females, and then the capes for like Batman are there specifically to not show the butts of Batman. But that's kind of ridiculous, because Batman has always had a cape. It wasn't added in the video game. The physics engines that control the cape, I don't think they were custom programmed to not show the butt of Batman in any Batman game. Even if it was programmed that way, that really just makes an argument that there was a, like, perhaps homophobic is the wrong word, but there was an overly obsessed programmer who then would have programmed it that way, and that would have been wrong too. We should be seeing more of Batman's butt in the games, if anything. That's not an argument for censorship, which is all that these arguments ever really come down to. And in a real way, this is the Western version of the upskirt shot argument too, is that, and the Western version has already established in their minds that it is a settled argument that there shouldn't be upskirt shots in games, and that's why there has been pretty much 0 games in the West released or made for the Western market that has upskirt shots, even in natural scenarios where it would occur. Which, if you break that down, how many times in the real world have you seen a male where they're sagging, or a bit of the top of their underwear is showing, or a girl has thongs coming out of the top of her skirt? You see that all the time. And certainly if you're doing enough of an activity, anyone wearing a skirt will eventually flash an upskirt image, or flash their underwear. At one point, that was just high school antics and fun, like the desire to flash people, and now all of a sudden that's a huge problem, and particularly in video games. It goes to a bigger thing, and I hope I'm not coming off as just a lunatic ranting too much here, but like, this is something that is being fought as an argument inside of video games, because it's an argument that would have been laughed out of the room anywhere else in any other conversation. I think thinking about like real world professional volleyball there in particular, it's like, yeah, you're playing volleyball, people are going to see your butts. And they've even made volleyball more popular by showing off the butts of the females and the males. But like I said at the beginning, this is kind of a minor controversy. Like, one side is going to go, yeah, don't change anything from Mass Effect when remastering it, which is frankly what you should do when remastering anything. If you went and remastered Schindler's List and you took out, say, some of the violent parts or some of the implications, or took out like all the Nazi symbols or references to Nazism, you would be ruining a classic. It would be a huge controversy and completely unacceptable. Same is true for remastering relatively newer games. When you say something's a remaster, you shouldn't change anything unless it's just an improvement of visuals or audio. You shouldn't change the angle of the camera. You shouldn't George Lucas it. And that's really where this comes down to, is that there's a group here that very possibly is not the people that worked on Mass Effect and that are George Lucasing the game. Particularly, you run into a weirder and more important argument in that the argument will be that they shouldn't change how the first game in the Mass Effect series plays, and they totally have already said they're not changing the ending of Mass Effect 3, that's the thing nobody liked. So if anything was going to be changed and well received as a change, it would have been the ending of Mass Effect 3. I would have left in every wonky camera angle that happened to show a character. But yeah, there's a decent argument if you're going to change anything and make a impure remaster, you should change either how the first game is playing, which they are doing, or you change the ending way before you care about camera angles. I feel like also there's a obvious bias in Gamma Sutra's article here, which is now taking forever to load. Yeah, it definitely has occurred to me that perhaps part of the part of the reason why my network might be messing up is because I've went overboard with the quality of service settings, and if I was to remove some of the quality of service settings, it would like process it a little faster and easier. But that's an awkward catch-22 for sure.
It won't be long now.
Hey, no dirty tricks.
Oops.
What do we have here?
Oh, come on.
Messed up there. Shouldn't have killed that card. Here's the exact quote. Specifically, the animations around, we couldn't really change a lot of those. But there were times where you could change the camera to not focus on those animations. So a male shepherd animation would have him sitting with his legs quite wide open with a low camera, where if you were wearing a skirt, it would be a bit unflattering. Which, once again, this is set far in the future, so it might be completely socially acceptable and even rude for a female shepherd to not be have her legs wide open. And see, that's a whole different controversy where as best as I would describe them, anti-men people are pushing men to literally hurt themselves by squashing their knees as close as possible together on public rails, calling in the anti-man spreading concept, which yeah, there's no reason for something to be called man spreading anyways. If somebody is taking up more room than you think they should, you should probably just ignore it and move on with your life, not make a huge campaign against it.
You're strong.
Like, particularly on open travel, public travel, you don't want to start fights. But yeah, I did also want to mention here that like, there's really no pictures in Gamma Sutra to even give you good information as to what's being changed, where it would be easy enough to find a screenshot of a femshep butt or a femshep sitting with her legs wide open. I don't even know if the female shepherd is wearing a skirt. So it's just like terrible news reporting, as it were, by not willing to show it. I mean, you could hide it and you could trigger warning it all you want, but let me just search femshep sitting. Okay.
My quarry won't escape that.
I see a comment in a forum here from 2011 talking about femshep and masculine poses. Okay. Like, remember, this is a game in particular where it was originally designed for you to be able to play as whoever you want, to sleep with whoever you want. And yeah, I kind of feel like there's a real failure here to consistently stick to the idea of an open-ended RPG game in space where you can play as a character however you want, they're literally limiting your options now. Censorship is winning over the concept of like determining your own character. And ironically, I found an image, and it's still Gamma Sutra, but it's a Gamma Sutra article from 2010. And here we have, see, this is basically where I think you have a character, and I think where a lot of these butt shots are going to be. A character is standing. Here we have a female shepherd sitting. She's not even really wearing a skirt. I don't think any of them ever do wear skirts. So yeah, she's sitting in a kind of natural pose, or you would definitely call that a natural pose for a male. And we know at the time they were definitely probably considering cutting the female shep model altogether. I will say, when looking with, I think I have safe search turned off, there are some Rule 34 drawings of a female shepherd. So in those, like, Rule 34 drawings, undoubtedly, that you will see more than you normally see.
But it's home. The hunt has only begun. I'll look after this town for as long as I breathe.
Okay.
Away with you! Wait, is this the deadline?
Home sweet home.
Well, this ain't ideal, is it?
So here we have a Game Revolution article, and see, this is what her outfit I think mostly looks like. And yeah, it's just pants, just tight pants, things you'd see all the time. And yeah, maybe she's wearing a skirt here, but it's blacked out and dark, and clearly they didn't animate any of that. Yeah. This scene, had it been male shep, would have looked exactly the same. If you want to tell me this was an awkward scene and you're fixing it because of that, that would make sense, but you've got better things to work on. And see, even in this presentations, they've got like 3 images that we know they've talked about, because they're not going to release actual lists of what's been changed and what isn't been changed. So I imagine when the Mass Effect remaster comes out, we will have somebody work out that what exactly got changed and what exactly doesn't get changed. And a lot of these points also, I think you at different points get to change your costume. So one depiction of a cutscene might have her in a skirt because you chose to put her in a skirt, versus whereas the same cutscene might look different in a different costume, and that's always a risk. it is a particularly weird thing to focus on, considering has that wasn't a big focus of the game developers in the first place. Like, it would almost feel more natural. I'm not saying better by any means, but it would feel more natural if Mass Effect was an adult game and intentionally originally was designed to show a upskirt shot or show the butts. Like that feels so normalized these days for a game to be like that and have some censorship. But this is just changing the Mona Lisa because you don't like her smile. And that's fairly high praise that I would imagine I really wouldn't back up. I don't think Mass Effect is comparable to the Mona Lisa, but for people who like it, like, you should not be happy about these changes. They make these changes this time. There's going to be another remaster, version 2.0 at some point, that makes even more changes. And then there's going to be a soft reboot. And maybe that will be better overall for the game, but you're going to lose a little bit every time. And frankly, I would like to see games much closer to the way they re-released and remastered Resident Evil 4, because that game has been like released on 12 different platforms and they have barely changed any of it at all. Moving on, we have a Komatsu article. Moving Out DLC Movers in Paradise launches February 25th. This is a co-op game, so it doesn't particularly interest me, but I do think people that do like Moving Out will be interested around that. Komatsu has an article, Meteorize acquires Alpha System. I don't recognize either one of these companies now. Don't recognize any of these games that they've made. Sisters Royale, Five Sisters Under Fire, which is a vertical shoot 'em up, so they must make shoot 'em ups, and that would explain why I wouldn't recognize them.
You wanna play with me?
Right.
See you around, Slick.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Martha. This looks like a zombie first-person shooter. Dark screenshot syndrome. Screenshots don't load, which once again, that's why I don't think I really even need the suspender as a default suspending of tabs thing. So I am gonna just whitelist all Steam pages and all Gamasutra, Gametsu, and Techraptor pages, and I suppose also Twitter, because yeah, it's too much of a hassle. Speaking of hassles, as I'm being hassled with my Wi-Fi, that is one weird thing that I have done something that adds like a slight delay when you start to stream. So there is something there being misprioritized when I would like streams to start and have no pause in the video, because that's super annoying. Right. Let's do this.
But it's home.
And then let's do this.
No right to tread here.
For the town of
This.
prosperity.
No right to tread here.
And then let's do this.
Should I fall?
Random follower. Well, that sucks.
This is the end.
You think you're strong? Away with you!
See you around, Slick.
Yeah, this game Martha, I don't feel like there's enough here. See, and this is probably a great example of why, if you were to try to make a modern version of the original Alone in the Dark game, it would kind of just fall apart. Just wandering around even a mansion with zombies wandering around the building requires such a high level of polish that it's not going to work. This game is $3.59. It's English. That's actually too cheap for this type of game.
Stop it.
Next, we have a game here that's all in Asian characters. It is tagged as an action-adventure 2D game, and that's looks like what it is. Hack and slash game. It looks visually polished, very nice. Early access, but English not supported, Chinese only. $11.69. It's a shame because so rarely do you get a Chinese game that actually looks like a video game, and this actually looks like a video game. Undoubtedly, you've got some like Chinese cat girl characters here that are emphasizing some cleavage, but I bet there's not actually any adult content here. I could be picky and say the heads-up display is a little unpolished, but not even that bad. And okay, if I attack. Yeah, if I strike,
The world ends.
I do 4 damage to everything. I have to strike.
My stomach.
I can summon a dutiful steed, but I shouldn't. Interesting.
A glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Casual Commando, which seems like it's a mobile game where you're controlling people walking down a path. Seems almost kind of like an Infinite Runner or a Lemmings game in a modern sense. Modern take on a Lemmings game, which there might be an idea around that. Where the Lemmings walk down the line and you have to press different buttons on a cell phone to solve the next barrier. This is 59 cents, English only. As it stands, not polished enough though for me to really want to cover. At 59 cents it might not be that expensive, so you might give it a try if you're bored and have nothing better to do.
I owe those women a debt.
For the town's prosperity.
This is my fate after all.
Home sweet home.
So this is my fate after all. That's why I'm retiring early.
Well, if I could heal myself and do a whole bunch of damage to him, I could win, but that's a big if. Next, we have a game on Steam called Equaline, which looks like it's just a math puzzle game with drawing lines. Honestly, I feel like this would just be too frustrating for me. Like, doing basic math is not something that I've done in a long time, and putting a gameplay element around it I don't think makes that entertaining to me. $10.19, English and Japanese. Arguably, a mini game like this in a standard AAA first-person shooter might be beneficial just to remind people how to do basic math. And in a funny way, you could almost make a joke of it where they have to test you for concussion, so they give you these basic elementary school level tests to do of math or spelling or alphabetization, things that would be dead simple, but in the middle of a first-person shooter with the game potentially not pausing might actually be a bit of a frustration. Like that would be an interesting take on it. And then the overall real-world effect there is that more people will be reminded how to do basic math. Not that you really need to know how to do basic math, even. Like, it's you look kind of stupid in a conversation once a month, once a week at most, if you can't if you can't say what like 27 plus 43 is off the top of your head without pausing or thinking about it. But if you're a real accountant, you're probably using computers and calculators. If it really is part of your job to do that kind of math, you get back in the groove of it. And then the vast majority of people don't need to do that kind of math. Even mathematicians don't need to do that kind of math because they more often are doing more algebraic things where it's like 2x plus 4x equals y or something along that line, which that is the math that was taught to students in high school, and I think still is taught to students in high school. Even the fact that they've changed the way they teach math so many different times really goes to show that we haven't even found a great way of interpreting mathematics and teaching it. Either that or they're just changing things for arbitrary reasons, which maybe they are. If anything, I would make the argument that students in school are just they just don't have the free time and patience that students once would have had to justify. Oops, that was a mistake. To justify learning math the way it was taught in the old days. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Evil Seal, which actually I would say looks a little bit more polished than your average first-person zombie shooter. I don't know if I really believe that there's a game here. It's $5.99 English, Italian, Japanese, but I want to put it on the follow list. If this can come out of early access, if it can get major improvements on the graphics, it feels like there's actual ideas and attempts here to have different levels and different characters and enemies instead of just random zombies. This could be like a 5-hour experience that is not so horrifically bad that you want to bomb it as soon as you see it. See, next we have a game called Magic Battle Cry, which looks like a Chinese MMO and looks very unimpressive. It's early access, $2.99, and yeah, Chinese only. Let's see. Next we have a game called Fritz and Chester Learn to Play Chess Volume 1, which seems to be a almost adventure game built somewhat around the concept of learning to play chess, but not really. Interesting. Sumo's being shown off. I don't feel like Sumo's ribs would ever show unless they're a particularly skinny sumo person. In a weird way, like the idea of integrating a point-and-click adventure into chess puzzles in the way it looks like it is strange. Problem here is you've got another game that's $24.99 and it's promising to be Volume 1, and that is just way too expensive. So I have no reason to give this the benefit of the doubt and put it on the follow list. And this developer has put out other games called Fritz Chess Volume 16, 17, and 15. And now it's Fritz and Chester. So they've been releasing mediocre games before. Let's see. Yeah, it does seem like this is a publisher or developer who is just obsessed with the idea of like totally obsessed with the idea of chess and is making some awful games around that obsession.
Whoa, you're strong.
Another loss, man. Yeah, we still definitely get into these losing cycles. And, I mean, all I could really do is try to play a runecraft instead. They really need to fix the daily quest so that you can play as one of 3 categories of players, or just get wins in general. Next we have a game on Steam here called Boring in Paradise, which seems like it is a artistic game, but I would really call it a lot of just low effort attempts at programming with no animation skill. It's $1.99, English only. It's just so visually ugly, I couldn't imagine ever playing that. I am quite the visual snob. I really am not gonna hide that. Interesting. Well, we have a visual novel here called Leap of Love, Safe Edition, although the logo for the developer Androphos Games isn't particularly family friendly. So here you've got a character with big busts, more characters with big busts, and more characters with this big bust. They seem to be into the big busted blonde haired girls, which that's what you're into. $6 and 29 cents, but then you could buy the unsaved version also. So they're trying to sell both versions in the bundle. That seems weird and rude, frankly. Like, if you buy the unsafe edition of a game, you should be able to play the safe edition for free. And arguably, having 2 different versions of your game on Steam doesn't make sense instead of just making it DLC, or frankly just an option inside the game. DLC works fairly nicely because it does potentially allow a parent to buy the safe version of what is a visual novel adult game for their teenager without letting them see the nudity. Although at a certain point, I don't even know what is a realistic age group in which you make that decision and say that out loud to your kid. Like, a 14-year-old saying, hey, you can play this game that I absolutely understand is an adult game that has adult scenes in it, but I'm giving you the version that doesn't show you the adult scenes. I mean, that's pretty crazy. At a certain point, the only thing that that even would make any sense to me is if you were telling a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, hey, you can play this adult game, but you've got a 10-year-old little brother or sister running around, so you have to play the censored version. It's like, man, I mean, it really just smacks into the face of a willful ignorance of just how easy porn is to get on the internet. Unless you've just gone through and really family filtered out your internet, like, and see, even that doesn't really work because then they can just get it off a cell phone, kid's cell phone. It's hardly like there are a lot of opportunities for free to filter the internet on kids' cell phones. They charge for that and then probably don't even do a great job. The major cell phone companies do. Anyways, for Leap of Love, it's $6.29 and it's English full audio. It doesn't look particularly great. I mean, you certainly, like, even in the depictions here, like, there's nothing here where the safe edition makes any sense at all. Yeah. Yeah, just like absolutely none of it makes any sense at all.
Ice is snow choke.
Okay.
Mana, come forth.
To coldly go where seasons sleetings. I feel slushy.
Let's continue moving forward. Here we have the Legend of Heroes Sin no Kisekai KI Thor's Military Academy in 1204, which this is part of the Legend of Heroes series, but is getting mixed reviews, so I wonder if it's running terribly or if it's just a bad port of something. English is not supported here, so there's probably not going to be any English reviews, which that kind of stinks because I would like to know what specifically is about this that is getting reviewed either by the Korean, Japanese, or Chinese players. Like, from the looks of it, it looks as polished as all the other Legend of Heroes game. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if this was a PlayStation Portable spin-off or a PlayStation 3 exclusive originally. Well, I was gonna do this to make a copy of that.
Lots of bones, but make it fashion.
And then I could draw some cards. And I could put this on the field.
Nothing stops me once I got my speedy boots on.
And can deal 1 damage to him.
Things I do for fashion.
And
This match is mine.
can do this.
I always catch the varmint. Eventually. Justice finds a
Just
way.
attack there, I guess, is the best move. Next, we have a game on Steam called Clash of Warlords. This looks like a mobile Chinese game. Nothing of interest. Free to play. In-app purchases. Chinese only. Yeah. I can't say I particularly just on the face of it hate the idea of a free-to-play game having a Steam version. So it would be just xenophobic at a certain point to say, well, I don't want Chinese games that are mobile games that have Steam ports, particularly if they're good looking games. And for a cell phone game, that game in particular looked decent enough for what it is. I don't think I can expect great graphics on a cell phone port of most games if they look terrible on the cell phone game on the cell phone also, because the screen and resolution is lower. On the other hand, if we had great looking games like Destiny Child, which frankly I've just become a unpaid advertiser for that game, but yeah, if all the games looked as good as Destiny Child did, that would be nice. Get that.
You beckoned.
And this, what are we trying to do? We have all these like amulets and then nothing
Face of a chameleon.
nothing we can really do with the
Earth and assault.
amulets.
Born to be fabulous. Moving on, we have Zhan Yuan Sword 2, which looks like it's an RPG, but it kind of looks more like an NES game. This really is a game that I feel like culture clashes quite a bit. Also, these characters look really, really tiny. Frame rate doesn't look particularly great either here. There might be a decent story here. This might be like a Final Fantasy, but it looks too much like Final Fantasy 1. If anything, I'll make a good argument here that for a Chinese game, there's actually considerably fewer bits of text on the screen and menus. This is $3.49 Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. It might not actually be a Chinese game. But yeah, and it's a sequel, so you, I guess, potentially could assume that that means something.
Watch closely, apprentices.
Can I haunt you too?
Let's see, can't evolve. I'm out of evolves. And then we have Zhang Yuan Sword, Dance of Maple Leaves. These might be ports, or these might have been. Well, this says it came out in 1995, which that's definitely more explainable. That explains the graphics a little bit, not amazingly, but yeah. $3.49, Chinese only. That certainly does open up an interesting concept that I had never considered before. There might be some hidden gems deep in the history of Chinese game development that have just not seen the light of day outside of China, and releasing old Chinese games that are very popular and very successful might certainly open the door to reconsidering the level of quality games that the Chinese can make. I don't know if any of that is really true, and frankly it probably means we'll just see a bunch of games that look like NES games, so even if they play really well or are written really well, I'll dismiss them more than likely without a second thought. Moving on, we have a game here from 2004 that's just a bunch of Asian characters and then the number 3. I guess that's Taiwan Mahjong, which I guess maybe that's Taiwanese Mahjong or Taiwan Mahjong. Yeah, it does look like it's half RPG game, half playing Mahjong. English is not supported, $4.89. We have apparently a 1 and a 2 also. If this was called Taiwan Mahjong and that has to do with Taiwan, then that also implies that in 2004 they weren't following the now official line that there is no Taiwan and it's now Taipei, China, and China is basically trying to annex and be a bigger empire by grabbing more parts of countries, and frankly a lot of other countries allowed them to do that, Britain in particular. Here we have the second game in this series, so we're going backwards. And I would say in this instance, the animation is very different, and you're kind of in a bad layout to play Mahjong. That's kind of a bad design, but 1997 was when this came out, so maybe they didn't know how to reach it, how to do it. $2.09. Yeah, again, this might be historically more important than it seems. And then here we have the first game, and this is 1994. And this too looks very different. If anything, I would say the first game and third game seem to have had the same artist, and then the second game was handed to a different team. They're barely even showing the tiles in these screenshots, and this is a pretty terrible layout also. It's 69 cents. It seems like they're getting cheaper as they get older also, which that's fair enough. That almost certainly should be the case. How long have we been going? 2 hours? Let's see. The game Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai Hinokami Kaputon has been confirmed for the Xbox Series, PS5, Xbox One, and PC. It turns out that Demon Slayer last year in Shonen Jump, I managed to see a video about this, outsold pretty much all the other Shonen Jump magazines in its print publishing. Now maybe Shonen Jump is moving more to its Shonen Jump online service, and so that might be why things are more weird. But yeah, like the top 25 issues were all Demon Slayer, and then you get a one-piece issue. So Demon Slayer seems to be very, very popular. Also, from that article, Shonen Jump needs desperately to find some long-running successful series, otherwise they're not going to have enough to fill out their weekly magazine. Which, the way Shonen Jump works, I think is a little weird, but it's kind of a cool idea too, and I'm surprised that you don't see Marvel or DC do something like this. They've tried things in the past and it didn't ever really stick, but the idea of having a consistent, every week we're going to release a collection of shorter stories that have maybe 15, 20 pages of a story going forward. Of course, that's a high workload, and that's part of the problem, is that people are getting burned out trying to meet the deadlines for Shonen Jump, and often the delays happen, where arguably, in comparison, the amount of work that's put out by a DC or Marvel creator is kind of laughable compared to a mangaka or animator. Oh. Although, in all fairness, manga is also black and white, so that saves you a lot of time. I would say, as for video games, brace for several 3 or 4 Demon Slayer games coming out on different consoles. Demon Slayer's story also kind of ends, I think, so unless they're going to come back and make more of a story, which I think would be hard to do, or make a prequel, I don't think it will be a long-running fandom. And the Japanese will probably move on to the next interesting thing that interests them.
The hunt has only begun. I've still got far to go.
So yeah, I just don't have. Yeah, I don't think we'll be sticking with Demon Slayer that long. I don't think it's much of a story to try and convert into a video game either. It's probably going to be a fighting video game at most. Let's see. Next, I want to show this game, Turtle's Quest, on Steam. Look how awful the animation here is. They've taken a attack animation and given it to a metal worker here, and he is just wildly swinging in the air, and this is the video they put out. Look how awkwardly his back moves, and how he's just looping between the exact same thing. Like, this is the kind of animation that has long since been easily made and fixed, like in something like Skyrim.
It might be dry, but it's home. For the town's prosperity.
So yeah, that's just
For the town's
like,
prosperity.
yeah, Turtle's Quest is just like an awful asset flip. Although, in all fairness, I will say it does have a lot of stuff here. Like, somebody is trying to make a colonial port town, and they use that level and that design. Not a lot of games that take place in colonial port towns either, or in that time frame. This is free to play as a single player, English and Italian, so I don't even know what they're saying is aimed at kids. It doesn't look like a game that's really aimed at kids. Yeah, I don't even know what the point of making something like this. You have a developer called Kids Revolt. Like, yeah, I have no idea what they're even thinking. I will say, though, it is nice that at least so far we have not seen any way in which some creepy, for lack of a better term, I guess, pedophile make a game on Steam and Steam Direct and then use it to try and get in contact or steal information or spy on kids. So at the very least, we haven't had a nasty story like that happen on Steam or any other platform. It's probably too much work, and frankly I think somebody smart enough to potentially program a game would also probably be smart enough to realize that they would get caught fairly quickly otherwise. So do I want to do this?
There you are, my little trespasser. What an oaf.
Darn it! I won't lose
Away
next
with
time.
you!
This
Wouldn't!
and
You
this.
wouldn't!
I could have evolved that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Rivertia, or Rivertia, which seems like it's a single-screen puzzle game where you flip certain pixels to revert the image between black and white. This is a concept, sure, and it seems like it'll connect to reverse pieces automatically, but I don't think there's enough of a full game here. $3.99 English, Japanese. Like, if you were really, really bored, I could see this, but this really feels like a game that should be 69 cents. This is the level of quality I would expect from a 69 cents game. Now we have a game. I have to be careful how to say this. I think this is a joke game. Let's call that PH Hucker in the Ashes, because the other way I would pronounce that, I think, would get me probably demonetized. Every single image here looks incredibly different and looks like a joke troll game. It's $2.39. I have no interest in that. Let's see, we have a game called During, Before, and After COVID-19, which looks like it's probably just a dark screenshot horror survival game. Like, we're seeing trailers that are showing us flyby images, which are slightly fancy to look at, but I don't think that there's a real game here because we're not seeing any real gameplay. And to have like 4 different videos is interesting, but if I skip through 2 of them and I literally don't see any gameplay, this makes me feel like this is more a walking simulator than anything else, and the on-screen prompts certainly aren't selling me on the game either. $9.99 English full audio. Okay, well,
Reality will never fade.
I won't let you get away.
let's go ahead and win, since we can actually win.
What an oaf.
Away with you! An exemplary battle.
Honestly, I don't think I want to play any game based on the pandemic. It's either not going to be that interesting once the pandemic is gone, or it's just going to be this ever nefarious conversation or thing that exists. And so making a video game of it, making a game of it is basically making light of it, and I just don't feel like I'm in the mood for that. Well, we now can just play whatever we want, so let's try Wraith Bloodcraft. Here we have a game called Scuffed Tower Defense, which looks like a low effort joke tower defense game. It's early access, $8.99. Yeah, not any amazingly great games. Yeah, we already talked about the game Norsk Epistle. So I'll have to talk about that again. TechRaptor had this article. The Twitch purple screen of death is reportedly ruining game embeds,
My barrier is
which
impenetrable.
which embedding, I guess maybe there was some ad blocking that was blocking it, and instead giving this purple screen at a certain level. Calling it the purple screen of death is kind of ridiculous, though, because unlike the blue screen of death that crashes your computer, Twitch should not have the opportunity to crash your game or computer. TechRaptor has an article here. Heritage Auctions talks about the gaming marketplace. They're calling it a, quote, incredibly strong marketplace. And this is barely 3-4 paragraphs if you're interested in reading it. Once again, I don't think I want to read that though, because A, I don't have time, and B, I don't want to get ideas of breaking up my own collection out of greed. Yeah, at a certain level, unless I could sell my entire Nintendo collection for $1 million or something like really, really life-changing, and frankly, $1 million in certain parts of the United States is probably still not enough to be life-changing. It would be something that I would probably regret for the rest of my life on top of that. So you have to really ask yourself, how much is a good night's sleep worth to you? Because to some people, they undervalue that, and some people they overvalue that, and I maybe overvalue it.
I won't hurt you.
Well, also as someone who has insomnia, I'd almost do anything for a good night's sleep consistently. Moving on, we have a game here called Puzzletronics Digital Infinite 1. This is circuit diagrams, so I can tell you that this is like a AND gate, this is a NOT gate, this is an AND gate. These lines are just circuits. So you're dragging tiles around to make a circuit, and you're trying to potentially get the things to line up. Interesting idea. I've often wanted to see games like this, and kind of hope somebody like Zachtronics would be able to pull something off like this. The thing here is we already have a game called Puzzletronics, and so this is $1.39. Let's see how well Puzzletronics was reviewed. It came out in 2020, and it has seemingly more circuitry to it. Alright, well, I can A, put this on the wish list, and then B, put this expansion on the following list. And I'll have to think about maybe if this person is just selling the same thing twice, or if he's rethought his game and changed it slightly for the digital infinite version.
As promised.
But yeah, nothing there looks terrible. $1.39, bunch of languages. Let's see, what is it? English, Spain, Spanish, and Portuguese in Brazil. So English and Spanish, basically. Let's see. Yeah, I'm starting to feel a little lightheaded. I may have to wrap up abruptly today. TechRaptor has an article, Rust Softcore Mode Update released for casual players, which honestly, that might be a very good selling point for me to play Rust, because the idea of getting killed over and over again is not interesting. I still feel like Rust is pretty much still a multiplayer game though, so I'd have a hard time believing that there's an experience in Rust if you just want to play a single player experience, or if you're going to play alone against random people. I imagine there's still ways that you're going to get trolled or have a miserable time. Let's see.
Go! Go! If you want me to hurt you, I'm gonna scoop out your nose.
For the weak.
There we go.
You have summoned the blade of
Next we have a game on Steam called Aberration Town, which looks like just a asset flip zombie first person shooter. Nothing interesting there. $19.99. Way too expensive. I can see the beginning of the end here, so we are now just at the point where we have mostly leftovers from Fridays. Here we have a game called Crime Stories. It's from HH Games. It's a match 3 game with a, I guess, crime story theme. $5.39. This is Crime Stories 2 in the Shadows. You do definitely run that risk of there being too many games in that style and genre without it really being worth the money. HH Games is selling it as a match 3 game, but I also see that it has some hidden object elements, which that's where I recognize HH Games from. So there's really no reason for me to put that on like the wish list or fall list, because it's just not a game I'd ever actually play. Next we have a game called Soul Cycle, which I think has to be connected to some kind of Bluetooth power speed sensors, which I don't even know where you would get those. And then you have to cycle on Mars. So there's like 2 models apparently of something that you can stick on your bicycle on top of having a bicycle that you can use indoors, which that's really expensive if you buy a good bicycle, a good like mountain bike, and these monitors, which are probably very expensive too, and then another $19.99 for this, and they're calling it an MMO. Frankly, this is a game that I would think only should exist on Steam because they're giving it away for free when you buy the Bluetooth scanners, and it's not even a good looking game at that. The idea of biking on the moon, sure, does have that appeal. It's something you can't do in the real world. But you still have to be kind of careful.
Hey, check this out. Time to dance for your life. Get ready to fly.
See. Next we have a game called Run Ralph Run, which I would almost say I like this art style with the circular explosions, but I kind of hate the repeated pattern of the blocks, and it's fairly obvious that they're making a run and gun platformer Mario clone here. I just heard that Super Mario World, by the way, has like a really hard secret that you can unlock that changes the overworld map into a Halloween palette, and it changes the skins of some of the enemies to a Halloween palette, which, yeah, requires a lot of work and probably isn't worth it. You probably could get an emulated save file to do the same thing much easier. As for this game, yeah, Run Ralph Run isn't worth it either, so I'm gonna say no to that. Can we win without playing this? I don't think so.
Void Claws, Terminus.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
Okay. So I hit this. I evolve this.
This one's all
The ruin of 6 heralds to sink.
And I attack here.
me.
And then attack here. And then attack here. And attack there. Hey, I might be able to win here. Next we have a game on Steam called Into the Haze, which they're zooming in on these zombies very close on this video, so at least they're proud of their graphics. It's not the best AAA graphics ever, but I think there might actually be a game here. Although, I kind of want to see more of this video to be certain of that. No, it kind of just feels like it's a survival game. It just feels like a Rust clone fighting zombies, which that's slightly different, but not different enough to interest me. $11.99. They're comparing it to the Evil Within 2. I've gotten into a loop of watching like reviews of the Evil Within 1 and Evil Within 2. This is English only also. Because I watched somebody review the Evil Within 2, and they just did a review that, like, definitely on the subjective elements, I completely disagreed with the person, and it was an interesting experience. I don't know if it's something that I have enough self-control to stick with, to follow someone that you completely disagree with subjectively. I mean, like an Ebert to your Siskel. But also, yeah, I don't know if I'd want that either. Like, it might be helpful to have somebody who's just has a completely different mindset than you. Like, there could be a YouTuber out there that hates like Japanese games and loves Western games. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there like that, and they could have every opinion that's directly opposite of mine. But if they present it well, I might be able to listen to them, but I'm not sure I really could, because it's so easy to just dismiss people you don't agree with and not listen to them, even if you know that mentally you should be more open-minded and at least hear other people's opinions. Yeah, well, I guess you do this. And then what? Okay. This guy can evolve for 0. And then we can deal 4 damage
Check this out.
to him.
The world cycles on. Pain and suffering are what I live for.
Okay.
The hunt is on.
Moving on, Gametsu has an article. Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker expansion and PS5 version has been announced. This apparently sends them to the moon. Final Fantasy XIV is the MMO game. Just to remind people of that.
Be a proper lady, you know.
And yeah, I have really no interest in Final Fantasy XIV, so I'm not even going to bother to scroll down to the rest of this page. I want to hurry up and finish. Let's see. More damage to an enemy.
Promises.
And then this.
Kind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin. Allow me to take my cut.
Though I said, I will rise again.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Green World Catharsis, which I think is probably not a polished enough game. You seem to be playing as an otter with radar on your back. It definitely feels asset flippy. Doesn't feel like there's something there. $4.49. Bunch of languages. Let's move on. Let's see, next we have a game called Bullet Garden, which looks like a shoot 'em up game where you're playing as potentially 3 different characters at the same time. I don't know how you would control 3 characters at the same time.
I lost. You're tough.
Let's see. English is not supported. It's $2.99. It's Japanese only. Yeah, I have really no idea what you're controlling. Maybe what you're doing is actually just playing the game like this, and this presentations are disingenuous to say the least as far as what's on the left and right side. That must be the case. Is that every screenshot shows it as a standard vertical shoot 'em up game, and I think that's what it is. Alright. Well, I guess I'll give it one more try. just go back to the Forest Craft since I know that's fairly easy to play. Next we have Shadowbane, which looks like an MMO, low effort game. $8.79. Yep. English and Chinese. It's kind of funny, we've gotten to the point where I can say an MMO is a low effort game. And not feel like that's a contradiction.
Is fighting and despair all you know?
Let's see, Open Critic has an article here. The Resident Evil movie reboot will debut this fall, so they're trying to reboot the Resident Evil movie series, which I imagine that was somewhat successful. But also, who knows really where movies are going to go anytime soon. Here we have a game on Steam called Instant Farmer, and I know for a fact this was one of the leftover games. And it just looks like a Minecraft farming game with nothing else to it. $1.39 English. There's a huge bundle of a whole 12 items for $10. We haven't seen major abuses of the bundling lately, but also it's fairly easy to get away with abusing the bundle system. And it's kind of hard to even define what is an abuse of the bundle system. It's close to I know it when I see it type argument. If anything, I could see some kind of arbitrary price requirements for anybody to list a bundle where the bundle has to be over $15 or at least one item in the bundle has to be over $5. That way you could eliminate people that have hundreds of games that are all 99 cents for like $100. Well, that wouldn't even work in that scenario, but that's some kind of limitations like that. But honestly, just having somebody look at how the bundles are made and what the bundles are every now and then would be helpful. I would gladly make a side job of filtering Steam's website for them by flagging games if I get a single penny for every single game that gets rejected for being low quality. Like, I could probably make a decent amount of money, $50-$60 a year, doing what I'm already doing for free in that way. Even if it was just like in-store credit. But honestly, if they were going to give me in-store credit, they could easily give me like a dime, a quarter, even $1 for every game I flagged as being low quality. It still cost them less. It would basically cost them nothing. Next we have a game called Comet 64, which says it's a programming game. And at a certain level, it looks like it might be a programming game where you actually are programming. But this gray depiction is questionable to me. It's positive. It's $11.99. They're comparing it to Human Resource Machine, which I liked, and 7 Billion Humans, which I didn't like. So I'm going to put this on the fall list because I am a sucker every now and then for a programming game. But I would say right now I am kind of out of favor with them, in favor of covering more like visual novels and other kinds of games in general. But I imagine I'll get the itch. I suppose also if I stopped working on my router and my server and stopped having problems with all of them, then I would have that itch to program. There definitely were some other projects that I'd like to do, and I'm just sitting on them because I just haven't finished other projects. Like I have an actual physical bookcase I still have yet to put together, which I need to get that done before anything else. Next we have a game on Steam called Possessed Bloody Asylum, which looks like it's a horror game, maybe probably a horror asset flip game. A lot of dark screenshot syndrome happening here too. Let's see, $1.69, but it requires VR, English only. Yeah, and this is one of those cases, once again, where if you're playing in VR, the graphics have to look amazingly good, and having a hand like just not connected is a problem. It can't be that hard to animate a sleeve on people and have the sleeve feel like an actual sleeve to hide the fact that it's missing.
It might be dry, but it's home.
It's missing an arm inside the sleeve.
I'll look after this town for as long as I breathe.
Okay, what do we want to do? I think we have to do this.
You have no right to tread here.
For the town's
That's
prosperity.
today's sermon.
Yeah, possessed bloody Asylum for a name is also a problem. It's too low effort. Next we have a game called Escape from Dinosaur Island, and clearly this is a low effort game targeted at very young kids. The concept's not terrible if there was more polish to it, being kind of a Jedi with a lightsaber running around hacking and slashing dinosaurs. I mean, that's not too different from Monster Hunter, but the graphics here look terrible. $6.99, third party EULA, English only.
You were done for.
Not making it to the fall list. Actually, I think we barely put 2 or 3 games today on the fall list. Next we have one called Sprint Racer. This is one of those top-down racing games, which we see fairly rarely, but none of them ever seem good enough to justify buying it. Anyways, the only reason this game was even slightly interesting when it came out in arcades is because it was in arcades with a steering wheel on it. That's not something you're likely to have on a PC. $9.99, English only. Yeah, nothing there of interest.
And that concludes today's sermon.
I won't let you get away.
Let's see. Can we keep ourselves alive long enough to win here? Let's see. Next we have a game called Wetlands, and this looks like this is from Ziggurat, so it's an old game from 1995. I believe I saw at the beginning, did it say it was made by John Woo? New World Computing. Yeah. John Cole is a merc. I guess I misread that. Yeah, in a funny way, this was probably not a great game, but there might be some historic reason for this, and at least you know somebody tried really hard in 1995 to animate this and make this look good, and you can see some love and attention in the animation style, even if the frame rate's not good or the resolution's not that great. This is $4.68, which might be a little too expensive for a game, and in all fairness, it's not like I recognize this game, but I'm gonna have to put it on the follow list. They're saying it's full motion video, which I question. Maybe it's been rotoscoped video. I would believe that if this was rotoscoped and animated over full motion video.
There you are, my little
Darn it, I played wrong.
I will rise again.
What an oath! What
Wow.
an oath!
Next we have another game from Ziggurat called Zephyr, which also seems to be of similar age. Although I would say this one looks a lot worse. So I'm going to put it on the follow list, but I think I probably would get motion sick and not really want to play this. It looks like it's mostly a Doom clone from the looks of it. Let's see, but I'll put it on the follow list. $4.68, English full audio also. And then next we have a game called Planet's Edge. See, all of these are from New World Computing, so they just negotiated some kind of contract. And I feel like I've seen this art before, but I don't recognize this game really. And this looks less polished, from 1991. It's $5.35, so maybe it was more popular. English this time without full audio. Once again, I'll just put it on the follow list and imagine those decisions will be fairly easy. Okay. This one can't evolve. So I want to do here,
No right
here,
to tread here. No right
and
to
then
tread here.
here,
The path ahead is overgrown.
and then here,
You have no right to tread here.
then in the turn. Next, we have a game on Steam called Aerofly RC8, which looks just like it's a combination of flying multiple things, probably pretty terribly, unless these are models of remote controlled planes, which maybe they are, and so each of these is actually flies fairly similarly via remote controls, and they're just different skins. I guess that's what they're supposed to be. It's a VR game. They're charging $71.99 with 2 expansions that add up to another $89.98. It's VR only, several languages. That is a hard no. Absolutely not for me. That is way, way too expensive. Even by the train simulator overpriced comparison, that's way too expensive.
The path ahead is overgrown.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Bog Lord, which it looks to me like it's just a kind of poorly animated, poorly designed turn-based puzzle game. It's free to play, English only. I did, suppose we could check that, actually. Let's go home. I think that'll be the last game for today. I did buy the Ticket to Ride bundle, and certainly some of the things I already had because I had the basic Ticket to Ride, and I think some of the other games like Ticket to Ride Europe maybe I'd gotten. But each of the bundles for Ticket to Ride in particular are super expensive at $4 for just one different board style, and clearly there still is 3 of these that I didn't get. So even the Humble Bundle, in which I paid like $10 to get a bunch of games, including a lot of the DLC, still didn't really give me everything. It's not like I'm a super fan of Ticket to Ride or anything. I'm just being an insane completionist, if anything. So I guess I have to wishlist this, and then wishlist that, and then wishlist that, and yeah. So after spending $10 giving to charity, I would still have to spend $10.17 to get a complete collection. And if they were going to throw in Carscaroni, which I didn't realize they didn't own, and Hasbro's Battleship, how is Battleship's pricing? It's on the wish list. $9.99. It's not terrible. I haven't gotten back to playing the Game of Life either. That's something to think about. Moving on, we have a game called Underland, which seems to be a fluid physics style game where you're dealing with the fluids more actively as a puzzle. I'm calling it a dungeon crawler, but that'd be a weird way to crawl dungeons if you ran into random areas like this and you're having to deal with fluid physics all the time. It's $1.19 English only. I just don't think that there's enough here to that looks like actual interesting gameplay mechanics. It just seems to be a tech demo more than anything. Next we have a game called Buy Hads, which well, there's some visual polish here. It's maybe too much. It's a negative 2D puzzle platformer which you have to fight robots to find codes you need to complete. And I don't know what they mean by negative 2D. Seems like it has some fuzzy, floaty jumping. Yeah, this just doesn't look like this plays particularly interesting or particularly fast. Just feels like this would be dull. $5.99 English only. Could be super generous and put it on the fall list, but I'm not gonna bother. I'm just gonna say no to that. Next we have a game on Steam called Lights Orb, which seems to be is more than likely just a asset flip parkour game with neon graphics, which once again these kinds of games are getting better and better looking every day, so it's getting really hard to realize what they are. Like, this would be Mirror's Edge, frankly. Like, this is Mirror's Edge when Mirror's Edge came out. Now I barely even want to give it the time of day. But it does seem like there might be something here. This is $3.99 English only. I guess the recommendation engine, come to think of it, the relevancy engine seems to be getting better. They must have tweaked it at some point, because like that they are comparing it to Mirror's Edge, where so often over the past couple of years we've seen them say it's compare it to completely different games, which made no sense at all. Next we have a game on Steam called Craze, which is a top-down twin-stick shooter. And the graphics look a little cutesy, like Among Us, but I think that's pretty much it. $7.49 English only. I don't know what a game like this would have to do to really interest me. Like, I'm willing to play Smash TV at some point, and that's pretty much it as far as top-down twin-stick shooters. And I'm not going to put that on the fall list. At some point, my taste might drastically change, and I might go back and play a whole bunch of other games, but I doubt it. I doubt I'd live long enough to see that. Here we have a game called Bioshock Samurai, which I think this might be an asset flip game too. Let's watch the video and see if we can get an actual display of any gameplay. No, it's just like flybys of the visuals, and then when you actually get to it, it is just kind of basic hack and slash animations. That's all it is. I'm kind of glad that a lot of game developers are incompetent about hiding how their game actually plays and looks. Otherwise, I'd get tricked a lot more. This is $2.99 English only. Nothing there. This is going to bring it to the fall list. Next, we have The Great Plague Exodus, which looks like it's a text-based game, and it might have an interesting story, but I don't think these graphics are particularly good. And since it is mostly looking like a text game, although there is a decent number of pictures, just don't think I would be interested there. $7.99. I'd be much more interested in the Oregon Trail game, Going Through Hell, that we saw earlier today. Next, we have a game on Steam called Slay the Dragon, and it's already rated very positively. Yeah, this looks like a Zelda-esque game. In all fairness, this might be a top-down twin-stick shooter-style game, but I guess it's better described as a top-down twin-stick hack-and-slash. There may not be much fighting happening here. Well, it seems like there's a decent amount of that, but also it seems like you might spend a decent amount of time just platforming and walking, and it might be a fairly linear experience. I like this animation. It looks like somebody actually tried something different colored leggings. And it's free. Interesting. English only. Is this a student project? Well, the price is right there. No wonder it's very positive for a free game. It's being published by the Animation Workshop. And even the soundtrack is free, so I wonder if this is a company that is just trying to prove itself as being capable of animating to get more work. Although I don't know if that's really how you do things, by just listing a free game on Steam. Although that might work very well. Next we have a game that's all Asian characters. They're calling it an RPG puzzle game. It looks like to me it's probably a horror, kind of escape the room game in 3D. And none of that wants to load. Yeah, it seems like you're walking around a creepy place. Well, English is not supported, so I can't put it on the fall list even if I wanted to. $3.39 Chinese only. Doesn't look terrible. It feels like there is a chance that there's some polish here. But there is also a chance that a lot of this is just asset flipped stuff too. Yeah, there's a lot of random imagery on the screenshots. Let's see. Next we have a game called Ascension Transition in Silver. It's tagged LGBTQ visual novel. Let's see. Yeah, kind of a flat marker drawing style that I would suspect is more Western. And the screenshots want to load. This is free. They're comparing it to the Nonary games. I don't know if that's the best comparison, but that's probably the only visual novel I've actually played that is mostly a visual novel. 2 to 3 hours, 5 multiple endings, English full audio. Well, is there any reason why I would put this on the fall list though? No. The part about visual novels is that they have to be visually interesting too, in my book. Particularly for me, because I think the novel part is the part that I'm less interested in. So I do want, if I am going to play a visual novel, it does need to look either very wild and crazy or very, very pretty. Next we have a game called Ink, which seems like it's cartoon doodles fighting other cartoon doodles in a top-down twin stick action. But it's tagged as a massive multiplayer game. So $7.69 single player, but tagged as MMO for some reason. Just everything is not working. Yeah, I don't think just looking at this video though there's enough there to interest me, so I'll skip that. And then we have Lamplighter on Steam, which looks like it is a terribly animated half puzzle game, half visual novel. It's $4.99, English allegedly full audio. Right, well then that comes down to the Humble Bundle, I believe. Got some other tabs here I'm trying to close. I've really dropped the ball as far as finishing the automation software that I was trying to write to upload videos and schedule them. I wanted to point out on Steam here we're logged into my Steam account, and at the top bar, possibly for the first time ever, possibly for the first time in a long time, we have, well, possibly since last Honey Pop game, we have Honey Pop 2 Double Date out on the front of the front page. And yeah, you've got girls in bikinis and the love fairy in her underwear, effectively. But I don't think any of the screenshots there are are not safe for YouTube or not safe for work. And the fact that it is top tier being promoted does go to show something, certainly, as far as the direction that Valve is willing to go. Although, you do also have to run into the argument that Honey Pop is being made by a Western developer, so we might have a issue there. Honey Pop is already rated very positively. Honey Pop 2. So yeah, we still might have a bit of a split there between whether something is getting promoted from a Western developer versus a Eastern developer. That being said, we also right next to it had Digimon Masters Online listed, and you can see that that is fairly very mixed results. And that sadly tends to be always the case. And there is like nostalgia for Digimon, so if they just made a decent game, people would want to play it and be happy with it. It's just that Bandai Namco doesn't fund people to make decent games. They make low effort games, and this definitely kind of feels like it's a MMO with in-app purchases, and that's exactly what it is. Okay, so yeah, that then brings me to the Humble Bundle store, and I guess the chances of a new Humble Bundle coming up is probably not that much. Interesting. We also have a different display here. We have a shelf here for games bundles. Now we have a shelf here for books bundles. So they've changed their website, and now we have a shelf for software bundles. So going forward, it might be a lot easier for me to just say, no, we don't have any new games bundles. It was like 5 months or more between when I last bought a Humble Bundle versus now, because so many of the Humble Bundles were just not good offerings because I already had most of the games. Right, so then that brings me back to my Twitter feed, which a former YouTube employee launches Black Oak TV streaming service to super serve black viewers and creators. I mean, good luck for them. At a certain point, I would say that definitely seems like self-segregation. I would much prefer if Black Oak was just a person of color run company that was opening up its services to everyone. The idea of creating a effective UPN competitor to YouTube just does not sit well to me, and it seems kind of myopic. It's not forward thinking. It's not thinking big enough. But it also probably does particularly highlight the way a lot of people at YouTube and Google probably think, and that they're just so SJWE that they can't make a good product even if they try, because they have to make it an SJW product. Let's see, we got some other bits of news that we'll talk about, and then we'll end today's stream. And then I think I might very well just take a nap. Jeez, I don't know if this is a real image, or I mean, I guess I could assume it's a half photoshopped image of the 9-foot tall lady. I think somebody's cosplayed her and just happens to have a massive rack on her, so she's got more cleavage than even the character in the game does. Jamie Lee Curtis is going to play Tannis, the archaeologist, the crazy archaeologist in the Borderlands movie. I don't know. I guess I don't know how crazy Jamie Lee Curtis really is in real life versus just having the ability to play crazy, because she certainly has played it in some of the other recent movies she's been in. But yeah, that they are getting people to sign on to this movie, and then of course they could easily unsign on at any point, or the movie could get canceled. Let's see. Open Critic has an article, the Prince of Persia remake gets delayed again. I'm going to assume that that is old news and that's just being repeated, and this isn't like the third or fourth delay in as many days. Little Nightmares 2 reviewed embargo details from opencritic.com also, if you're interested in that. Not going to cover that. Forza 4, we'll talk about that. Keep on scrolling down Twitter. G4 Tech TV, as it is, may become a annoyance fairly quickly as somebody to follow on Twitter, so I may have to unfollow them fairly quickly. Anyways, Gematsu has this article. EA is going to acquire Glue Mobile, gosh, speak right, for $2.1 billion. What did Glue Mobile even make? Let's see. Covet Fashion, Design Home, Diner Dash Adventures, Disney Sorcerer's Arena, whole bunch of mobile games, obviously, that don't interest me. But I guess that is an indication that EA is pushing forward, or continuing to push forward into mobile gaming. Gematsu has an article here. Deck 13 Interactive opens a Montreal student for an ambitious new project. As Deck 13, what have they worked on before? They must have worked with Focus Home Interactive at some level, because they're getting mentioned. Gamasutra has a blog here. Can you cheat to get ahead on Steam? Question mark. I think the answer is probably true. Yeah. An article like this probably should come out fairly consistently so that they were like articles like that should probably come out fairly consistently, so it embarrasses Valve to actually try and crack down on the cheating. TechRaptor had a review here. Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons each had the best year ever, despite many game stores shutting down, which inherently that probably is the case for comic books, or it's going to be the case if comic books succeed anyways, is that the game shops and the comic book stores are going to suffer, while moving to digital and offering your product directly is going to help places like Hasbro and DC and Marvel succeed. Moving on, we have a Gamasutra article. Kowloon Knights backs indies with a funding deal for 23 titles, which that's quite a lot. We already had seen this though. There was a whole list of them, and it was a decent list of single A and double A and indie developers. Nobody who had made anything that was a breakout success, but nobody really that had just made massive stinkers either. So a good funding pitch, I would say. TechRaptor has an article here. Forza Horizon 4 Hot Wheels DLC and Steam release announced. So apparently it's not even on Steam. I didn't realize that. I don't know if I specifically would want to buy Forza as a racing game, but it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Alright, well, with that, I am done with the stream. So as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.